actually, my first job was working for a very small marketing agency in Charleston, West Virginia that looked a little bit like this all the way down to the brick walls. And we were busy. We were so incredibly busy. And the problem with that is that I always felt like I was running in my career, but I didn't know where I was running to. Does anybody feel like that sometimes in your career? You just feel like you're going, you're going, you're going. And the way that I sort of reference this is professional whack-a-mole, because all that I could deal with in this small marketing agency with only 10 people on staff who were really doing the work of 20, the only thing that I could deal with was what was directly in front of me. And that's why I called it whack-a-mole, because all day long it was just, okay, there's a fire, okay, another one, okay, done. And then like at 5:30 it was time to go home, right? And so I was like, well, this is exhausting. And it wasn't all that fulfilling. And the problem was that the days turned into weeks, turned into months, turned into years. And as I look back on my career, I had what I called this nagging discontent. I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, but there was something that I was doing that I didn't feel like I was doing enough. Or I didn't feel when I left, I was exhausted at work, but I didn't feel like it was meaningful. And so I wondered whether it was me or whether it was the job. And so I thought, well, maybe if I got into a corporate environment, then I would be working at a slower pace, and then I could kind of stop and figure out what's going on. And that actually worked, because I worked for a company called Dixon Hughes Goodman in Charleston. Very different culture from a small business, going from 10 people to 1,200 people. But one of the most significant things that I learned when I was there, I was still crazy busy at the firm, don't get that wrong, that didn't change. But the firm had a whole lot more resources for career planning. And that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about today. Because what I found most interesting about working at that firm was that they actually, this is what you can do when you have like money and resources, they took their most successful people and said, let's create a profile. What do all of these successful people have in common? So they figured out what the competencies were for the most successful people in the firm, and then they created what they call a success profile, which is what you can see on the right. I don't expect you to be able to read it. So they created this success profile, and then everyone else who worked for the firm knew that that was the success benchmark. So they would meet with their advisors, and the advisors would say, here's the skill gaps that you have, here's what we think that you need to work on, and here's some action steps that you can take. Coming from the small business environment, this was utterly revolutionary to me, that you could meet with an advisor and then leave knowing exactly what your goals were, when you were going to achieve them, and how. That was like, oh, okay, so I was profoundly impacted by this, and I thought, I am going to create a business plan for my career, just like that. When you think of top competencies that employers are looking for, these are among the top. There are a lot more, but these are among the top. So when employers sit around and say, what are the competencies of the position that we want to fill? 9 times out of 10, you're going to see these things at the top. So what I'd like to ask you to do, in the interest of focusing yourselves, creating this quasi-career plan for yourself, is to say, which of these here would I say are the top 3 things that I need to work on? So in a sense, what you're doing is what I did for myself and what our firm required us to do when we were there, is creating those job competencies. What is it of this list that you think would be the top 3 competencies that you would need either for the position that you have now or the one that you want next? And then we have life competencies. And I like to marry these two together so that you have your job competencies and your life competencies on the same paved. Because I think that if you lean too heavy in one direction or the other, that's when you get that nagging sense of discontent. I really believe that. So when you think about, okay, well, these are the roles that I'm playing: mother, partner, your spiritual, inner peace, whatever. Which one of those, what are the top 3 of those that you want to integrate into your life? And then the 3 sub-points underneath those are the action steps that you will take to underscore that value. And the difference between this and a lot of other career plans is that I want you to focus more on who you want to become and less on what it is that you want to do. And this, to me, once I got this, everything changed in my life. And it's funny, I'm in a conference full of women, so I can actually kind of say this, but when I was putting this presentation together, I actually got a little bit emotional about this slide because, again, once I truly got this, it's like everything just sort of cracked open. Because up until that point, everything that I had ever planned for myself was always to be a stepping stone to something else. It was always, I'm going to do this so I can get here. And once I stopped and said, I'm not going to focus on so much on what it is that I want to do and focus more on who it is that I want to become, then I started focusing on being excellent in my everyday. I started focusing on what was most important to me based on the values list that I created with the job competencies and the life competencies. I knew what I needed to do to succeed at work. I knew the kind of person that I wanted to be at home, and I was able to marry those together and look at that document and say, how am I doing? Every day, how am I doing in this? And once I decided that excellence for me was not something that was going to happen 5 years from now, but in what I'm doing right now, that's going to, if I do it well, lead to that success down the road. That's when it all cracked open. So what the take home is to focus on who you want to become. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about how to do that. Has anyone ever heard of Ben Franklin's 13 virtues? Yeah, I was inspired to create my list. I've got 11 virtues by the Ben Franklin list. And basically, what he did was exactly what I just told you. Ben Franklin had a list that he created 13 virtues that he wanted to live his life by. They were things like humility. He wanted to imitate Jesus and Socrates. Resolution, order, cleanliness, all these things. And the reason why that I'm talking to you about what Ben Franklin did centuries ago is because virtues are timeless. And if he would have created a list that said, invent bifocals, check. Independence for America, check. I wouldn't be talking to you about this right now. That's because the virtues that he had, again, are timeless. That's why we're still talking about them. So the way that, this isn't Ben Franklin's chart, this is the chart that I created, this was the way that I want to spend my life. So I've got my own virtues at the bottom. Those are the what I'm going to do, what in my life I'm going to focus on. The intentions are how I'm going to do that. And then if you notice at the top, I've got goals. And the way that I divide my time is that I spend 70% of it focused on the what and the how of the virtues, and 30% of it focused on the goals. Now, I know that we're at a business conference, and a lot of you are you're all professional women. And I don't know if you're ambitious like I was. You wake up in the morning, or at least I used to, wake up in the morning thinking about what I haven't done, what I haven't got, what I need to do to get where it is that I want to go. And once this sort of paradigm shifted for me, I wake up feeling just so much better. That nagging discontent is gone. Because I'm spending 70% of my time on what I can control, and 30% of my time focusing on those goals. Now, this is not to say that I am not ambitious. I think anyone who has looked at my website wouldn't claim that I'm not ambitious, but it just means that I'm putting my focus on what I'm doing in the moment and not so much focused on what I'm going to do 2 to 5 years from now. Because none of us have a crystal ball. 2 to 5 years from now isn't guaranteed. So I wanted to just give you a quick sample of a couple. I have 11 virtues that I have. At the top is family, so that's the virtue. The intention is I'm going to put my family first. I'm going to parent proactively, model patience, love, and respect. Now, the way that I use this, and this has actually made me a much better mother because I wasn't as patient before with my kids. So this has become a filter question that I use in the moment when I'm parenting my children. So I think, am I modeling patience and respect now? No. Who needs the timeout? Me. I need the timeout. And just thinking that, just taking that 1 minute of separation and thinking, am I modeling the virtue that I want to live by? Yes or no? If it's yes, continue. If it's no, okay, then I need to stop and reevaluate and recalibrate myself. But it's not all about family. I have on here positivity and industry. Industry specifically, minimize time wasters, follow through on all promises, meet deadlines, and avoid procrastination. Deadlines has always been kind of a big one for me. Tara will tell you. My PowerPoint was about 2 days late. So I fall short of these virtues all the time, and frankly, so did Ben Franklin. But the point is that I created what I essentially refer to as a GPS for my life. You know when you get into your car and you program where it is that you want to go first and then that takes you there? This is my program. This is my program. So I know where it is that I want to go. And I will get lost, just like you get lost in your car, but you always know how to get back to center. And that's what this is for me. So if you, I don't actually do this, but some people are really hyper accountable about this. Ben Franklin was, and he swore by it. And what he did, if you really wanted to take this to the next level, was he created a chart for himself. And it was the virtues on the left-hand column and the days of the week at the top. And every single night, he would evaluate how he did on every single virtue. He would have either I guess it was a check or a straight line. And the check meant that he did good, and the straight line meant that that was an area that he needed to work on. And then he would go back and evaluate where the patterns were, where the trends were, which areas that he was kind of falling down on. And then he would make a point to spend more time focusing on that area. I have 2 children. One is 5, one is 4. I haven't gotten to that level yet, but I can see where that would be beneficial. And one of these days I definitely will. So that's for the hyper accountable. And when I was working in that small agency, that small marketing agency, one of the things that one of the words that I learned was evergreen. Is anyone familiar with evergreen as a business term? What evergreen means, this is, again, just working in a marketing agency, you hang around with a lot of videographers who use words like evergreen, because what it means is that you want something. You want to do a shot, you want to take a picture, you want to take a video that looks timeless. In other words, if your videographer says, I want this to be evergreen, you don't come rocking a fur coat, or you don't come rocking like a big sweater or something like that. You come wearing something that could be potentially worn throughout the year. And the way that I refer to evergreen in my plan is that my life is evergreen, so that my goals and my success and my happiness aren't dependent upon what I did or didn't do, what I do or do not have, what I have or have not achieved. My success is based on the evergreen version of me, right? And I think that that's exactly what Ben Franklin meant when he created the virtues list, and when he had this wonderful quote here that was, if we were as industrious to become good as to make ourselves great, we should become really great by being good. Thank you.